Dragon Age of the Veilguard wants you to discover whether or not they allow you to go full hog. Also known as the strangest headline that I have ever paraphrased about a video game. And yes, it actually is a real headline that happened. But before we get into the nudity and romance in Dragon Age, let's talk about how the Veilguard is going to absolutely rip your heart out. Hopefully, maybe, possibly, probably. For many players of Baldur's Gate 3, some of the most impactful interactions, if not the most impactful interaction in the game, weren't with the main story. They were the companions and their emotional storytelling. Their deep, often very dark stories about companions that had been through, well, quite frankly, a lot of shit, and how you could either help them or not help them. Hell, I'm on record stating that Karlach's story and that the accompanying music and performance and everything, it made me cry. It made me straight up bawl about that. And then Shadowheart's story, well, it came pretty close to doing the exact same thing towards the end of it. You know, if you've played the games, you know, those are, oof.
It's not my fault, I'm not to blame. These ain't my sins, I broke my chains. There's more to do if
But that is also why the latest information drop we got from Game Informer actually has me smiling about what to expect with the Veilguard. For Dragon Age the Veilguard, the companions are key to everything happening in the game, which I guess makes sense given that they were so certain of that they actually changed the name of the game from the Dreadwolf, the thing that like basically referring to Solus, to the Veilguard, thus referring to specifically your companions. And I guess yourself too, but also your companions. In fact, while BioWare General Manager Gary McKay talked about companions with Games Informer, he said that one of the areas they really wanted to push for the next Dragon Age installment was companions. That while they had great companions in past games, they really wanted to push the envelope. Corinne Bush, the game director, took it even further by stating that the companions in the Veilguard are, quote, the most fully realized complex companions we've ever created. Adding that, quote, they're complicated. They have complicated problems. Specifically, she went on to talk about how in the past games, companions felt like they were going on an adventure with you, the hero of Ferelden or Hawk. But in the Veilguard, the companions are so fleshed out, it's like you're the one going on a journey with them. And to that, I really have to point to Baldur's Gate 3, and I really don't want to get stuck in this trap of comparing games to Baldur's Gate 3, because it just feels like an unfair comparison. What games are going to be able to measure up to what Baldur's Gate 3 did, I don't know, in the next freaking half decade or decade or so? But it applies here, at least in this small, narrow slice of what we're talking about. In BG3, there was a shared main journey, but it definitely felt more like the companions were the story at times. Tab was on a journey with Will or Karlach or Lae'zel. Gale's story was, for lack of a better way to put it, pretty fucking imminent. His problem demanded attention, and if it wasn't tended to, your game could end pretty explosively. Baldur's Gate 3 in a sense set a whole new standard when it comes to companions in an RPG. And while I'm not expecting Veilguard to live up to that standard, the things they're saying are at least in the same realm. In the Games Informer interview, the idea of companions having their own character arcs, their own stories, is mentioned more than once, zeroing in on companion agency, which seems to be very important, and their uniqueness. But I wasn't able to fully figure out if this meant individual companion quests or stories. But one can hope, right? John Epler went on to explain this of the philosophy of BioWare when it comes to companions as one of their core principles, that the world of Thedas exists even when you aren't around, giving room for growth around ancient conflicts and grudges, and even romance, which we'll get to in just a sec. These companions are cornerstones of the game, or as Wesley LeBlanc puts it in the article, load-bearing pillars. They are the faces of their factions or entire portions of the world. With all the talk of how important your companions are and their stories, you might be wondering how you get to experience that with them. Well, we've already seen in the gameplay reveal key decisions you'll have to make during missions and lots of different pauses and cinematics and talking to your companions. As well as, of course, plenty of chatter.
Doesn't that destroy everything?
Solus always talked about how beautiful the ancient world was.
That world existed before the Veil, and he wants to bring it back.
Even if his ritual kills us all in the process.
Although I still worry that there might not be enough, but we'll see. Well, in the game, you'll also have a base of operations where each companion will have their own room. A room that acts not just as a reflection of who they are, but also where you're at in developing your relationship with them, learning more about their personalities, things that will be revealed over time. That sounds like a nice little touch, a visual representation to go with other story cues as you advance in a character arc. I'm not sure how much it's going to show, but it's still an interesting idea that these characters will have their own space, and a space that gets to change as you learn more about them. Where it gets really interesting though is talking about romance, and not just yourself and the companions, but between each other. In the Games Informer article, one of the things that popped out to me was something that the game director said about two companions who fell in love. This is something that's already been established, but if you didn't know, here's the short version. Your companions aren't just going to simply wait around for you to make decisions of whether you want to romance them or not. They can actually romance, well, each other. You know, that whole agency, that autonomy. And that can lead, apparently, to some very difficult and heart-wrenching decisions. The quote I'm talking about was specifically this one from the game director. The companions also develop romantically, and I'm not just talking about with the main character Rook. I'm talking about each other. There are moments in the game where two of our companions fell in love with each other, and I had to make some pretty challenging choices as it related to the quest we're on. And it broke my heart. It absolutely did. This immediately had me wondering, what decision? What was the heartbreaking decision that had to be made? The only example we've seen so far is a very limited one where basically in the gameplay reveal you had Rook say, hey, okay, I'm gonna go over this way and I want you to come with me. Not like a super huge thing, but it did note in that instance you actually saw a marked change in your approval ratings by who you decided to take with you. But there still didn't seem to be any imminent danger to the one you were leaving behind. But that doesn't mean that that's going to be the way it is throughout the whole game. And in fact, BioWare has a bit of a history when it comes to, let's just say, make you make hard decisions between characters that may have long-lasting impact through multiple games. And if this truly is the Mass Effecting of Dragon Age, well, that makes me very curious about what kind of difficult decisions will we have to make. Here's hoping that there'll be some genuine angst around decisions you make with your companions and things that will really make you have to sit there and wonder, what should you do? And then immediately regret it after you do it, and maybe even consider trying to load back till before you made that decision because you fucked up. And not just a decision like trying to decide if you want to woo someone or not, you know. But speaking of wooing, so if my video wasn't already demonetized, this is the one that did it. And I totally spent more time thinking whether I should put that in or not than making the entire freaking video. If you're planning on streaming the game or showing your 80-year-old grandmother, some caution may be advised, as it's been confirmed that there'll be nudity in the game. Not just for companions, but for your Rook too. But it was explained in one of the most bizarre ways I've ever heard. In a separate Game Informer interview, it was basically explained that yes, you can see breasts during character select and even customize them. A first in this series. When asked whether the nudity was elsewhere in the game, such as, you know, spicy romance scenes, Corinne Bush, the game director, stated simply that the game was a mature RPG. Anyone who remembers the awkward fumbling of DAO's weird underwear is probably somewhat relieved they're not going to go out of their way to censor a nipple here and there in a blood-drenched dragon-slaying adventure. Just what else might be visible? Well, that's what led to this article title, the thing that led to the title of this video, the is it full hog or not, because we don't know. because it was kind of stated that they want us to discover ourselves. And I will admit that it was kind of funny watching some compilations of people playing Baldur's Gate 3 for the first time, streamers that had no idea, and finding out that yes, there is nudity in the game, because that was kind of amusing. But still, it's a little bit weird, and not because showing genitalia in a game is weird. Like, genitalia isn't weird. I think we whizzed past clutching our pearls about that with Cyberpunk 2077 and more recently Baldur's Gate 3. But it's kind of weird setting it up this way of, hey, you know, maybe not, like dangling it in front of you. But while it remains to be seen just how mature the game is, it has been explained that some companions will be spicier than others. Something you'll just have to find out yourself, I suppose. Or not if you're not into romance scenes. It's, you know, optional. You don't have to do it. But if you're not, and it turns out that, you know, Veilguard is a bit more conservative than, you know, like what you're looking for, well, there's always Baldur's Gate 3 and their physics. I'm just straight up begging to be demonetized at this point. You know, but you can actually help me with that, because you see, there's one thing, a big thing, or maybe 2 or 3 big things that I haven't covered in this video about companions. Like, you know, how are they going to work in combat, and how, you know, some of the limitations that are on that, as well as, well, you know, who the hell are they? We'll actually cover that in this video right here, so you can check that out now if you want to just get a little bit more information on your companions and see, you know, how they're actually going to play out gameplay wise. Now, honestly, all BioWare needs to do here is set up a genius marketing move that shows that one of the companions turns into a darkspawn during spicy time, and then have that video go viral. Is that the new marketing meta?